And okay, let's see. I got some. Is someone trying to join? No, I don't think so. Okay. So, all right. So today we are there any questions from yesterday? Anything we discussed from yesterday? Anybody would like any clarifications? All right. Well, if not, then let's get started with today's content. So I want to talk about these two very cool subspaces associate with a graph. So there's going to be some algebraic viewpoint. Let's say there is still a lot of structural stuff going on, which is why we are covering it. But there's definitely connections with algebra. When you impose some algebraic structures onto the graph, you start seeing other cool things that you may not have observed otherwise that easily. So this is one such instance. So in particular, we'll be dealing with the group GF2, with the field GF2. And that is exactly the integers modulo 2. So you may be used to the notation z by 2z, z by 2z, however you call it. But I'll stick to Bondi Murthy and use GF2 instead. Okay. So it's exactly the integers modulo 2. So the if the plus operation is XOR, or if you like, symmetric difference, and multiplication as it is, right? 1 times 1 is 1 and everything else is 0. Okay, good. So okay, so let's go back to graphs. So here is an example of a graph, and what we are going to do is we are going to, in some sense, what's more important in structural graph theory is really the edges of the graph. It's the edges of the graph that determine the structure of the graph. The vertices is just the number of vertices doesn't mean much. Okay, so we are going to think of the subsets of the edge set of the graph, and we are going to associate with each subset of the edge set a vector, a 0, 1 vector. Okay, so in particular, this notation here, script E of G, is the collection of all subsets of the graph's edges. Okay, so to give you an example, if G is your graph here, and I'm looking at the subset with the red colored edges. Okay, so that has E1, E5, E4, and E10. Okay, so then this set of edges can be represented as a vector. So I have a vector with 11 components. Okay, each indexed by the edges. So the components of the vector are indexed by the edges of the graph, and I put a 1 whenever the edge is in the subset, and otherwise I put a 0, right? So this vector here corresponds exactly to the red colored edges, red colored subset. Okay, so this set script E of G, which is the collection of all subsets of the graph's edges, it may also be viewed as a vector space of dimension m. Remember that m is generally the number of edges of the graph. Okay, over GF2. Okay, and in particular, it is exactly isomorphic to of course here we are using isomorphism not for graphs, right? We are using for vector spaces. It is isomorphic to GF2 to the power m, right? So to give you an example, if I were to take another subset, let's say my first set is E1, E5, E4, and E10, the one I have shown in red color. And let's say I take another subset, let's say E2, E5, E3, E10. Okay. I can view both of these as vectors. One of the vectors is already written here for you, and the other one you can make it yourself. But essentially, taking the sum of these two vectors is the same as taking the symmetric difference of these two sets, right? So if I were to take the sum of these two vectors, I would get E1, E2, E5 gets cancelled, E3 and E4 remain, and E10 gets cancelled, right? And so that is how the vector sum works as well, right? So instead of thinking about vectors, you can always think
Sir,
about sets. Yes.
what is the meaning of GF2 whole to the power m?
It's each element is from GF2 and it is in m dimensions,
Okay, okay.
right? Yeah. Thanks. Okay. All right. So we are going to think of the collection of edge sets of the graph as a vector space. So we want to think of these interchangeably, right? I'm not going to use different notation. I'm going to use the same notation for the collection of subsets as well as for the vector space. Okay. All right. So it's clear that this is a vector space. It is exactly isomorphic to GF2 to the power m, right? But now this is not giving us any information about the graph really, right? What we want to do is we want to see if the structure of the graph can suggest some natural subspaces of this vector space. And if we can extract some nice graph theoretical information by thinking about these vector spaces, can we somehow impose an algebraic structure on the graph to get a deeper understanding of certain aspects of the graph, let's say. Okay. So as you can see, we are calling the lecture the cycle space of a graph, right? So we are going to start with the cycles of a graph. And I'm going to ask the following question. So cycles are clearly a very natural object to study, and they come up in many topics in graph theory and also in applications of graph theory. So what we'll ask is, do the cycles of a graph form a subspace of GF2? I'm just going to use the isomorphic one, the edge space of the graph. So I should mention that this is called the edge space of the graph. Okay. And we want to look at subspaces of the edge space that are naturally suggested by the graph structure. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this. Do the cycles of a graph form a subspace of the edge space of the graph? So you want to think of each cycle as a vector in this vector space. And do these vectors form a subspace? What does everyone think? Also, I would like to try out the raise hand feature. So if anybody would like to raise their hand, please try that as well. I haven't used this before.
Sir,
I suggested to use the raise hand feature, please.
Sir, where is the zero vector then?
Biplab, I suggested to use the raise hand feature. Thanks. Okay, so Biplab has a question.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I told that, sir. If it is a subspace, then zero vector already include that.
Right. So that is the first problem. Thanks, Biplab.
Yes.
Anand, did you also raise your hand at some point?
Yes, sir. Like
Yes.
It would not be a subspace.
Right. And why would that be the case?
Because if two cycles share some edges,
Uh-huh.
in that case, the combination of them would not result in a cycle, right?
Right. Okay. So we have two issues, one raised by Biplab and one by Anand. One is that the zero vector has to be in the subspace. So this is one issue. And this empty set of the empty set of edges of a graph is not a cycle as per our definition. So sure, we can modify the definition and say let's include the empty set and let's call it a cycle for convenience. The other problem, however, is more severe. It is possible that the symmetric difference of two cycles is not a cycle. So let's take a quick example. I'm going to use this example quite a bit today. So let's take maybe two different examples of the same graph. Okay. So first, let's take a good example, one which supports the question. So let's say I take this cycle of the graph, the red colored cycle, and let's say I take the blue colored cycle. Okay. Well, their symmetric difference is precisely all the edges that are red or blue, but not both red and blue, right? And so that will give you the green colored cycle. So this is an example where the symmetric difference of two cycles is yet another cycle. However, you can quickly observe that this doesn't have to be the case, right? So supposing I take this red cycle, I take this blue cycle, and then I add a third cycle. I take the symmetric difference of three cycles, which is of course the symmetric difference of the first two and then symmetric difference with the third one. And in that case, what you would get is not a cycle anymore. So let's draw this separately. Right, so this one turns out to be, yes, Joe, you have a question?
So when you say symmetric difference, you mean
Yes.
the addition in GF2, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Just
Yes.
wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thanks. Okay, so the symmetric difference of these three cycles is now no longer a cycle, right? This orange colored stuff that you see here, this is not a cycle. Okay, so that doesn't quite work. So the set of all cycles is not a subspace of the edge space. Okay, so the answer to this is no. So how do we fix this? Are there any suggestions? How do we fix this? Okay, let's see. Somebody has a suggestion, it seems. No. Okay, Anand, you have you've raised your hand.
Like if the cycles are forced to share at least one edge, then
Yeah.
this issue might disappear.
If the cycles are forced to share at least one edge, then
And then their symmetric difference might still be a cycle.
right. The problem, well, so that is a possibility. I would have to think about it a bit more. But the trouble is, we want to still stay within the algebra, right? So we can't insist. Let me see. We want to find a subspace of this vector space. Right, but then you would be very restricted, right? So how would you pick the elements of your subspace? Because then you'd have to pick one cycle, and then you can only pick those cycles which share at least one edge with the original cycle. Is that right? And even that, I'm not sure. Is it true? If two cycles share at least one edge, will their symmetric difference be a cycle?
Sir, it won't be actually.
It won't be.
Yeah,
Right.
because say there are two hexagons.
Okay, two hexagons.
Well, they are not really. I don't think you should draw them like that. But like, so
Okay.
basically, you can maybe if you force two hexagons and the two opposite, like the two opposite edges are shared by another hexagon.
Okay, sure. Right, I get it. So you want this edge and this edge to be part of another hexagon.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
I think in that
So let's
case
see
it
something
won't
like
be.
this.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
what will the symmetric difference of? Okay, so this is the first hexagon is what I drew, and the second hexagon is with these shaded edges,
Yeah.
right? What is the symmetric difference now? I
The
get these two. I also get these two, and I will get this part,
yeah.
right? So this is a collection of cycles, but it's not a cycle itself, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sir, I think you can say it when it's odd. Like if the parity is odd, then you can maybe guarantee that it will be like
Hmm.
a cycle. But
I
I
like
think I
the
don't have
word.
proof for that.
I like the word parity. So let me stick to that. So there is something to do with parity here. This is the key word. Can we look at all the examples and see what is going on? What can you tell about the symmetric difference of two cycles? It's got something to do with the word parity, which means odd versus even. I claim that if you take the symmetric difference of any two cycles,
Sir,
yes, yes,
sir, is it set theoretic symmetric difference?
yes, it is set theoretic symmetric difference, which is the same as addition in GF2.
Then symmetric difference here, how can you calculate with respect to edge or with respect to vertices?
We are
That is
looking at sets of edges, right? We are viewing our subgraphs as sets of edges, and so the symmetric difference is with respect to the edges.
okay, okay.
So that's a good point. It's important to keep in mind that for this entire lecture and for the entire sections 2.4 to 2.6 in the textbook, we are viewing subgraphs as sets of edges. So a cycle is a set of edges, and similarly, all subgraphs are sets of edges. So we are taking symmetric difference with respect to the edge set. Okay, good. So did someone raise a hand? Arnav, you've raised your hand.
That was before, like before when I was trying to tell the hexagon, I forgot to lower the hand.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, good. So I claim that if you take the symmetric difference of two cycles, you will get a subgraph with some special property. It has to do with the parity. Leads to a special subgraph. So it's a subgraph with some special property. I'll give you a hint. Think about the degree of each vertex. So you take the symmetric difference of two cycles, you get a new graph, you get a subgraph of the original graph. Now, what can you say about the degrees of the vertices in this resulting subgraph?
Is there, sir, is there regular graph?
Good. So someone has said it's too regular. Someone has said it's regular. Both of those are in the right direction. Okay, now I think we have the right answer. The degree of each vertex will be even. So if you take the symmetric difference of two cycles, you will get what is called an even subgraph. In other words, this is a subgraph. I'm going to put a term here, which I'm going to talk about a bit. We are going to get a spanning subgraph in which each vertex has even degree. So, right. So
Sir?
let's take a look at, yeah, go ahead.
Sir, spanning subgraph means that need to cover all the vertices.
Exactly.
But here,
Exactly. This is a very good point. Right.
but here it is not like that.
Yes. Yes. This is a very good point. Why is it spanning? So this is a technicality. For this entire part, we are going to think of all our subgraphs as spanning, because look, what we are doing is we are dealing with the edge sets of a graph. So what we will do is we will think that all the vertices are just there. Okay. We want to associate subgraphs with edge sets. And the best way to do that is to basically not worry about the vertices at all. So what we will do is, for this entire part, we will think that the vertices are always there and we are just selecting subsets of edges. Okay, so for us, a cycle is going to be you take all the vertices of the graph and you just pick a set of edges that form a cycle. Okay, so because we don't want to deal about the vertices, we don't want to think about the vertices constantly, we are going to assume that all our subgraphs are going to be spanning. We will just keep all the vertices and we will deal just with the edge sets. Okay, so this is really a technicality so that we don't have to keep thinking about the vertices. Does that make sense? So in particular, let me give you an example. You can think of this orange colored subgraph as a spanning subgraph. Well, this is already spanning. Too bad. Let me see. Let me make a more interesting example. Okay. So supposing I take, let's see, I don't want to make spanning. So let me make something more interesting. Okay. So supposing I take 2 cycles here. Let's say I take the blue colored cycle and I take the green colored cycle. Okay, the symmetric difference is going to be the union of these two because they have nothing in common, right? And what I will do is I will think of this as, let me just make the same drawing again. Okay, so what I will get, the result is these red colored edges, right, which is actually the union of those two. So this is an even subgraph, but I don't want to deal with the vertices that are not covered. So what I will do is I will think of my subgraph as being all the vertices along with these 6 edges. So my subgraph is going to be all the vertices of the graph, but the only edges are the red colored edges. And this is fine because the vertices that do not have any edges incident, their degree is 0 in the red colored subgraph.
But sir, in spanning, that must be connected.
No, spanning does not require connected. Spanning just requires the vertex sets to be the same.
Okay, so spanning tree must be connected. So,
Spanning tree is connected because trees are connected. Okay.
okay.
Thanks. So yeah, those are all very good points. So spanning does not require to be connected. It just means that the vertex set is the same. In some sense, spanning means that you don't want to deal with the vertices. You are just interested in the edges of the graph, right? Okay. So for this entire module, let's say, or for this entire topic, we are going to think of all our subgraphs as spanning subgraphs. And in this spirit, when we say an even subgraph, we mean a spanning subgraph where each vertex has even degree. In particular, isolated vertices, which are vertices that do not have any edges in the subgraph, are basically 0 degree vertices. And so that is still even degree. Okay. Good. So I claim that if you take the symmetric difference of cycles, you will get even subgraphs of the graph. Okay. And in fact, these subgraphs form a subspace of the edge space of the graph. This is actually the subspace we are looking for. Okay. So in particular, we need to show that the symmetric difference of any 2 even subgraphs is yet another even subgraph. Okay. So that includes cycles because cycles are even subgraphs. Let's see, there is some question. Yes,
here,
Anand?
So this particular subspace that you're talking about, can we think of it as the set of subgraphs which are 2 edges connected within the original graph? Since there will be a collection of cycles in the end.
You are partially right. The problem is these subgraphs may not be connected in the first place.
Okay, I mean each connected component in the subgraph would be.
Yes. So since we haven't talked about two-edge connectivity, I'm not going to go further into this question right now. But yeah, you are right. Each component, it can be shown that each component is two-edge connected. But let me not go into that right now. Okay. So you're right. Okay. So we will come to two-edge connectivity later in the course. Since some of you may not be familiar, I don't want to go into uncharted territories right now. Okay. All right. So it turns out that the even subgraphs of G constitute a subspace of the edge space of the graph. Okay, we need to show this, of course. I'm just stating it right now. Another thing we will be showing is that this subspace is generated by the cycles of the graph. By the cycles of the graph G. Okay, so in other words, you can always obtain any even subgraph you like by taking symmetric differences of some cycles. Okay, and this is why we will call this, well, we call this the cycle space of the graph G, and it is denoted as script C of G. Okay, so all of these things are things we will be proving, right?
Sir?
Yeah.
So you told that even subgraphs of G constitute a subspace of EG, correct?
Yes, that's right.
But my question is, from for subspace we know that if U or V belongs to this space, then U plus V belongs to the subspace.
Right.
But what is the notion of the plus here?
Symmetric difference.
Symmetry difference.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
And multiplication?
Standard multiplication. 1 times 1 is 1. Everything else is 0.
I think this is the scalar multiplication, correct?
Yes.
So 5 into this circle is all zeros. That include all zeros.
Well, we can restrict ourselves to 1 and 0. We don't need to care about the other scalars actually. But yeah, 5 is basically 1.
Okay, so one multiply one, other all multiplication will be 0.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we will be proving all of these things that we have written here. But I want to give you a picture of where we are heading. Okay. All right. Any other questions so far?
Then, sir, what is the additive identity, sir?
Let's see. What is the additive identity? What plus? So what is it that you can add and get the same thing? Can you tell me?
Empty graph.
Oh, I see the identity. Sorry, not the in. Right. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, if you add the empty graph to anything, it will. No, you want to. No, so what is additive identity? You want to get the empty graph, right? You want to add something. Sorry. Right, you're looking for identity, so you don't want things to change, right? So yeah, if you add the empty graph to anything, you will get the original subgraph. That's right.
Yes, sir. And sir, empty graph means all the vertices is there and there is no edge.
Exactly. Right. So we will always keep all the vertices, right? And we'll take a subset of the edges. Good. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? All right. So Right. So I want to take a slightly different approach now. Give me a second. Okay, so let's start with the following. The symmetric difference of any two even subgraphs is an even subgraph. Okay, so there is a point I want to make here. Notice that I'm calling this corollary 2.16, which doesn't make any sense because corollary is supposed to be an easy consequence of a theorem or something, and we haven't proved any theorems in this context. So I'm using the terms corollary or proposition or theorem, whatever, as per Bondi Murthy, but in reality, I'm not following things exactly. So they prove this by proving some other things, but I'm going to present things slightly differently. Okay, so that is why I'm putting corollary in double quotes. Okay, so we will actually prove it as if it is some proposition. Okay, so the order in which I'm presenting things is not always as per Bondi Murthy. Okay, so what we want to start by proving is that the symmetric difference of two even subgraphs of any graph is an even subgraph, right? And again, we are going to think of all the vertices being there. So we are just taking symmetric difference of the edge sets is an even subgraph.
Sir, rather symmetric difference of any two subgraph will be the even subgraph. Yes or not?
I'll let you think about that.
Okay.
Okay. Good. So what we'll prove is that the symmetric difference of any two even subgraphs is yet another even subgraph. Okay. So what does that mean? We have two even subgraphs. I'm not going to write down rigorous proofs for many parts of this course, especially when things are really straightforward, right? So I'll give you intuition, and it will be your responsibility to write down rigorous proofs in those cases. Of course, the difficult theorems, we will write down rigorous proofs of them, right? But in general, I will focus much more on intuition instead of wasting time over rigor when proving simple statements. Okay, so supposing we have two subgraphs of a graph G. So your graph is G, and H1 and H2 are even subgraphs, right? And you take the symmetric difference of these. Okay, so maybe I will use the notation. I don't want to use plus here. I will use this for symmetric difference. Okay, so yeah, if I use plus earlier, I'm sorry, I will stick to this for symmetric difference, which is addition in GF2. Okay, so we are looking at the symmetric difference of these two subgraphs, right? Good. So what we need to prove is that if you take any vertex V, its degree is even, right? That is all it means for a subgraph to be even, right? We want there to be an even number of edges incident at the vertex. So that brings us to some notation. For any vertex V, partial of V is the set of all links. So links are edges that are not loops. Incident with the vertex V. Okay, so you're taking all the non-loop edges that are incident at the vertex V, right? And in particular, we want to show that partial V intersect H1 symmetric difference H2 is even for all vertices, right? And we already know that in the original graph, in the two subgraphs H1 and H2, there are an even number of vertices at any vertex, even number of edges at any vertex. So let me make a slightly better picture here. Okay, supposing let me make slightly better drawings. Supposing I have a vertex V, I'm just going to do this by example. Let's say I have 5 edges. from 1, 2 up to 5. Okay. And let's say I have an even number of edges in both of these subgraphs. Okay. So I have 1, 2, 4, and 5 here. Sorry. Excuse me. And let's say I have 2 here and 5 here, right? And I'm taking the symmetric difference of these two subgraphs. So what will happen at this vertex? Let's see. 1 remains, 2 and 5 get cancelled out, and 4 remains. Okay. So this is just an example. Okay. So the point is you have you have an even number of edges incident at this vertex in both of these subgraphs, and you are taking the symmetric difference of these subgraphs. So I claim that in the symmetric difference, you will still have an even number of edges incident at this vertex. Okay. Can anyone tell me why this is true? We just took one example here. Why is this true? Joe, is it Joe? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Because for each interaction, we either lose 2 or get added 2, or
Right.
multiples of 2.
Right. Whenever there is something common, it's cancelled, right? So you can look at the intersection of the two sets, right? And whatever the intersection is, it will basically be thrown out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So supposing the intersection of the two sets is odd, well, then if you look at the vertex V in H1, if you remove the intersection, you will have an odd number of edges at the vertex. And in the same way, in the graph H2, you will have an odd number of edges at the vertex V, right? Because I'm throwing away the intersection, which is an odd number. And so what remains is odd in the other one. And then you add them up, you get even, right? Does that make sense? So what you do is, you look at the number of common edges. So in this case, the number of common edges is 2 and 5, right? And that's an even number. So what will remain is again an even number, 1, 4. And here what will remain is the empty set, and that is again even. And so when you take the union, right, because you have removed the intersection, now you just take the union, you again get an even number of edges, right? So there are two possibilities. Either the intersection is odd or the intersection is even. And in both cases, what you will get in the symmetric difference is an even number of edges at the vertex V, right? Can everybody write a formal proof of this on their own? If you have to be honest, we won't need to write formal proofs of such observations. But is everybody convinced that the vertex degree of any vertex will remain even? There is one problem. I did not deal with loops because when I looked at the notation partial V, I just looked at the set of all links. So I will leave this as a homework. Okay. So convince yourself that even when your graph has loops, it doesn't really matter. What if deal with loops? Okay. So convince yourself that this statement is true even if your graph has loops. Okay. All right. So are there any questions so far? Is everybody convinced? Yes.
Sir, that's a question. That sir, you told that intersection of symmetric difference of any two even subgraph is a even subgraph, correct?
Yes, right.
But I'm thinking that intersection of any two subgraph, is it
Right.
even? Is it even?
You think about it yourself. So maybe think of some examples and we can take it on Piazza. I'll tell you the answer is it's not true. What if you take an odd subgraph and you take the empty set and you take a symmetric difference of those two,
Yeah, that will be odd.
right? Yeah. Okay. Right. So yeah, so it actually, all of this theory that we are discussing does not turn out to be true for odd subgraphs, for example. This theory is applicable to even subgraphs. So there is something special about even subgraphs. Right? Okay. So, all right. So if we are done with this part, let me see. Okay. So what we have proved so far is that the even subgraphs constitute a subspace because their symmetric difference is yet another even subgraph. Yeah. So this proves that this is done. And we still have not proved that it is generated by the cycles of the graph. We still need to prove that any even subgraph can be written as a symmetric difference of some cycles, right? So this still remains. Okay. All right. So how do we go about proving that? All right. I want to take a slightly different viewpoint, and for that, we are going to need a few definitions. Right. Okay. So, all right. Maybe let me motivate what we are doing. We will actually prove something stronger. So, what remains to be shown, we still need to show that any even subgraph may be expressed as the symmetric difference of some cycles of the graph. Any even subgraph of a graph G may be expressed as a symmetric difference of some cycles, right? What would this imply? Well, this would imply that in order to generate this subspace, you just need the cycles of the graph, and then you will be able to generate every even subgraph.
Sir, rather than it is a linear combination.
Right, but it doesn't matter because since we are only interested in 0 and 1, either you take the element or you don't take the element, right? So linear combinations are going to end up just being a symmetric difference of a bunch of cycles.
Oh, okay, sir. Actually,
Yeah.
sir, when in group theory, some subspace generated by one element or one vector means that like they're taking linear combinations
That's
of
right. That's right. So you're right. It is linear combinations, but it is the same as taking symmetric difference of a bunch of elements.
Okay, sir.
Right? Okay. Good. So this is what we will show, and this will imply that the cycles of G generate the entire cycle space, which is why we call it the cycle space. Okay, this is what we still need to show. Okay, so let's go to an example that we did before. Let's take a look at this graph here. So notice that the orange colored subgraph, which is an even subgraph, is the symmetric difference of these three cycles: red, blue, and green, right? But in fact, it is just a union of two cycles. If you think of this orange colored subgraph, sure, it is a symmetric difference of three cycles, but it is also the disjoint union of two cycles. This is not a coincidence, which we will actually prove this stronger statement. We will show that instead of taking symmetric difference, you can just take a bunch of disjoint cycles. By disjoint here, I mean edge disjoint. They can share vertices. I can just take a bunch of edge disjoint cycles, and I can take their union, and that will give me the resulting even subgraph. So we will prove this slightly stronger statement. that you don't even need symmetric difference. You just need to take a bunch of disjoint cycles and take their union, which is of course the same as taking the symmetric difference of these disjoint cycles, right? If there is no intersection, then union and symmetric difference are the same thing, right? So we will show something slightly stronger. That instead of symmetric difference, we just need disjoint unions, right? So disjoint union is a slightly overloaded term. Let's just go over it very quickly. A set S is the disjoint union of sets A and B if S is equal to A union B, and on top of that, A and B do not have any common elements, right? So disjoint union is a fairly overloaded term. It says that it's the union, but it also tells you something about the terms that were used to obtain that union. In particular, they have to not have any intersection, right? And if you take a bunch of things, then it means that no two elements can have anything in common, right? So in fact, you can generalize this definition. It's disjoint union of A1, A2 up to AR if this is true, and AI intersection AJ is empty for all I not equal to J. Okay. All right, so this is going to be our next goal. But before we prove that, okay, so we have almost reached the end of the lecture. Perhaps I should just stop here. So what we will do tomorrow is we will, so not tomorrow, today is Friday, right? So we are talking about Monday. So on Monday, we will define decomposition and covering of a graph. And prove the above in this context. Okay. So that's the plan for Monday. And in general, what we are covering right now, just to remind you, is everything from sections 2.4 to 2.6 in Bondi Murthy, the textbook. But I'm not covering things in the same order, nor am I using the same proofs. Sometimes I'm changing things slightly to feel because I feel that it might be better to present it that way in a lecture. Okay. But yeah, in case you are looking for references, then those are the sections you want to look at. Okay. And we will continue next lecture from here. In particular, we will prove that the cycles generate the cycle space. And after that, once you have a subspace of a vector space, you can ask the question, what is the orthogonal subspace, or what is the orthogonal complement of this subspace? Okay. And it turns out that in this particular setting, it turns out to be another very nice graph theoretic object. So here the objects are cycles and even subgraphs. But when you take the orthogonal subspace, you're going to get another very nice combinatorial or graph theoretical interpretation of it. And I will leave that as a suspense. Okay. So that's about it. Are there any questions? I'll be here for another 5-10 minutes.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Yes, Joe, go ahead.
So multiplication should be also closed in the subspace, right?
That's right.
Even so, if there are two cycles with one common edge, and we perform multiplication, won't the edge alone
Ah,
remain?
no, we just want. Sorry, I didn't get your first question correctly. So no, not really. We just want linear combinations. That is what is required for a subspace. We don't need
Okay,
the
okay, yeah,
multiplication of
okay,
two elements of the space to be in the space itself.
right, okay, yeah, I
Right?
got it, Sana.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Sir, we haven't defined any, like, this is not an inner product space, right? So we still don't have a notion of a inner product between two elements, right?
The inner product is going to be exactly summation ai bi, where when the multiplication is standard multiplication and summation is symmetric difference.
Okay. So so we want orthogonality in that sense.
That's right. That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? I'll give you one more spoiler. We will also be able to connect all of this with spanning trees of a graph, either in the lectures or you'll be doing that on the assignments. I haven't made a decision yet.
Sir,
Yes, Anand?
so how do we, sir, here you mentioned an encoding for describing a subgraph in terms of vectors, right? So with 0 and 1 encoding. So can we
Yes.
do something similar for digraphs where each edge is directed?
Yes, there is definitely stuff you can do. The truth is, I'm not very familiar with this topic. Bondi Murthy has a bunch of sections on directed graphs. So every time they talk about graphs, they also have some sections on directed graphs, which I'm basically skipping entirely for this course, partly because it's my first time offering and I don't want to um, try to get ahead of myself and cover too many topics. So I'm completely leaving out digraphs. There is definitely vector spaces that you can associate with a digraph. So I'm pretty sure you can associate a vector space in the same way, right? For each arc, you have a component. Of course, the question is, can you say something cool about the digraph by studying these vector spaces? And the answer to that is yes. But I don't know what all you can say. I will try to look it up and see if there is anything interesting I can tell you. But there's definitely stuff you can do with digraphs in the same way.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, while I'm waiting, I'll take a quick look at Bondi Murthy and see what they say about digraphs in this chapter. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. I just don't have any concrete things to tell you. Any other questions or concerns? I see. So there is chapter 20 in Bondi Murthy. It seems to have a bunch of stuff on vector spaces associated with a digraph. We are not covering that chapter at all. But they have, yeah, they define these spaces called the circulation space and the tension space of a digraph. So yeah, you might want to take a look at chapter 20 in Bondi Murthy.
Sir, isn't this vector space itself a normal, I mean, an orthogonal subspace to this?
You mean to the cycle space?
Yes, sir. The cycle space is the orthogonal subspace to the cycle space.
Let me get your question right. So you are saying that this is orthogonal complement of itself?
Yes, sir. The even subgraph.
Right, right. So that is a cycle space, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. That is not true. There are elements that may not be orthogonal to themselves. It is definitely possible for some elements to be orthogonal to themselves, but not every element is orthogonal to itself. Let me see if I can give you an example. Let's take a triangle. I claim that, so this is your graph G, and it has exactly, the cycle space has exactly two elements, the empty set and the whole set, right? I claim that this is not orthogonal to itself. You can think about this now or later. Not its own orthogonal complement. So this is actually a good exercise. You can try to think about what is the orthogonal complement of this space for this particular example. Any other questions, concerns? All right. If not, I will stop recording now, and I will still be here for another 2-3 minutes.